If you're just getting started with Apple Home or smart home tech, or if you've already bought a bunch of smart home devices and you're wondering what's next, this video is for you. Over the years, I've built and rebuilt my smart home more times than I'd care to admit, and what I've learned is this. Most smart home problems don't come from bad products, they come from skipping or not understanding the fundamentals. This video is a complete Apple Home Smart Home Masterclass. It brings together my original Apple Home 101 series into a full roadmap, a single video with updated commentary to help guide you from beginning to end. We'll start with the foundation, your network, because if you don't get this right early, you'll have regrets later. Then we'll break down Apple Home hubs, wireless protocols like Thread and Wi-Fi, and how devices actually communicate behind the scenes, because that's all really important to understand. And after that, we'll talk about organization, naming, scenes, and automations, the stuff that makes a smart home feel intuitive for everyone in your house. And finally, I'll show you how I personally take Apple Home beyond the basics using tools like Home Assistant and other advanced options, only if and when you're ready. You don't need to implement everything at once. You don't need to buy everything at once or use everything I use. And you definitely don't need to be technical to follow along. This here is a roadmap, not a checklist, but if you're interested in smart home tech, understanding these fundamentals will really help you in setting up your smart home properly for years to come, avoid headaches, and help you understand which products would be best for your home now and in the future. I recommend watching this in chapters and coming back to sections as you build. By the end of this video, you'll understand how Apple Home actually works, how to avoid the mistakes myself and many others have made, and how to build a system that's reliable, responsive, and future-proof. Now, before we jump into the network section, I want to set expectations real quick. This is the least exciting part of building a smart home and probably the most important. It's also the part that I think most people rush or skip entirely, including me, when I first got started. So as you watch this next section, think of it as designing the foundation your entire smart home will sit on for the next several years. You don't need to buy enterprise gear. You don't need to copy my setup. You just need to understand why the network matters before you're too deep into your smart home journey. Getting this right from the beginning will save you lots of headaches in the future. With that in mind, let's start with the foundation. Choosing the right router. Now, in my opinion, there are really two main approaches to consider when choosing a router for your smart home. Now, option one, the simple setup. If you want something that's easy to configure with minimal effort, a quality mesh Wi-Fi system is your best bet. Eero, Netgear Orbi, TP-Link Deco are some options just to name a few. These systems offer quick setup through smartphone apps, pre-configured security settings, automatic updates, and good coverage through multiple access points without having to run Ethernet wires through the house. And option two is the more advanced control. If you're feeling a bit more ambitious and don't mind doing additional configuration and stuff like that, for this, I'd strongly recommend Unify. Now, something like Unify offers complete network control and customization, advanced security features, better long-term expandability, and more detailed insights into your network. I personally now use Unify in my home, but I've used many of the simpler systems in the past, and they work great too. Your choice really depends on your comfort level with networking and how much control you want. You might also want to consider how deep down this rabbit hole you think you might go in the future. Having full control and more detailed insights into your network can really be helpful for troubleshooting and organization. But if you want to keep things simple, there is nothing wrong with using those out of the box, plug and play mesh Wi-Fi systems. Now, as for Wi-Fi 6, Wi-Fi 6E, or Wi-Fi 7, if budget allows, I'd recommend getting the latest Wi-Fi standard for future-proofing. One nice thing about Unify is that you have to get your cloud gateway or router and your access points separately. And because of this, you can easily swap out your access points in the future if you want to take advantage of a newer Wi-Fi standard without having to switch out your main router. For example, if you have Wi-Fi 5 access points, you could later change those out with newer Wi-Fi 7 access points without having to replace your entire router as you'd have to do with those other plug-and-play mesh systems. Regardless of which system you choose, there are some key things to think about when setting up your network. First is the Wi-Fi bands. You'll probably want both 2.4 and 5 gigahertz bands. Most smart home accessories connect over the 2.4 gigahertz band. Some devices though, like cameras, thermostats, and streaming devices may use the 5 gigahertz band. Newer Wi-Fi systems also offer a 6 gigahertz band, which is great for future-proofing. More and more devices like phones and computers can utilize that 6 gigahertz band, but again, most smart home devices will connect over the 2.4 gigahertz band. And without getting too deep into the weeds, there are some notable performance improvements to your 2.4 and 5 gigahertz bands with newer systems like Wi-Fi 7. So if budget allows, getting something like Wi-Fi 7 might be beneficial down the road. A little bonus tip, you will want to make sure that you have IPv6 enabled on your network. IPv6 is required for Matter smart home devices, which is something that we'll talk a little bit more about in the next video. Next, let's talk about network separation. Consider creating a dedicated IoT network or VLAN for your smart home devices. This will keep your smart devices separated from your personal devices for added security. Unfortunately, many smart home devices just aren't very secure, so segmenting those from important devices like iPhones, tablets, and computers is a good idea. Many newer mesh systems include this feature built in and come with a dedicated IoT network already configured. With systems like Unify, you can create custom VLANs and firewall rules for even more security. And because most smart home devices will connect to the 2.4 gigahertz band, many people do like to create a dedicated 2.4 gigahertz only IoT network specifically for their home devices. Now personally, I've just always used a combined 2.4 and 5 gigahertz network for my smart home devices, and that's worked just fine for me. Now here are some things to consider regarding placement of your router and access points. First, connection type. Hardwired connections between access points and the main router are always best when possible, regardless of which router you use. Now, if Ethernet runs aren't possible in your home, look for systems with a dedicated wireless backhaul. This is a dedicated Wi-Fi band that is used exclusively for communication between the access points and the main router. These have gotten quite good over the past few years, and it's the next best thing if you cannot hardwire your access points or mesh Wi-Fi nodes. Next, consider strategic placement. Consider areas where you'll have smart devices in your home. That can even include outside areas like the front or backyards or the garage. Avoid placing access points near large metal objects. Place your router centrally when possible and add access points throughout the home for good coverage. For larger homes, multiple access points are going to be essential for good coverage. My house is about 2,100 square feet, and I currently just use 2 Unify U7 Pro access points in my home. You can use a speed test app to check the Wi-Fi signal throughout your home. Pay special attention to areas where critical devices will be located, but again, I would recommend trying to get solid speeds throughout the entire home and eliminate any dead zones so you don't have to worry about connection issues for smart home devices that you may want to add in the future. Unify and other manufacturers offer planning tools where you can upload your floor plan to ensure you have good coverage at every corner of your home. So you might want to check out something like that when you're planning your network. A few final things to keep in mind. 1, Ethernet ports. Think about how many wired devices you might need to connect. Smart home hubs like Philips Hue, Lutron, etc. will often require a direct connection to your router. If you do get a router without enough ports, you can always get a network switch if you need to add additional ports in the future. And 2, power over Ethernet. Some devices can be powered through Ethernet cables alone, like PoE cameras and hubs. And this does require a PoE capable router or switch. And then lastly, look at your internet service plan from your internet service provider. Your router speeds and your home network will only be as good or as fast as the speed you're getting from your ISP. If you're lucky enough to have gigabit fiber or higher in your area, then you're in great shape. But even if not, you can still establish a Wi-Fi connection throughout your home, perfectly suitable for running a smart home. But a good router from a reputable brand will definitely help you get the best speeds from your internet service providers. If you're interested in exactly what I'm using currently for my home network at the time of this recording, I have a Unified Dream Machine Pro Max. That's my cloud gateway or router. I have that connected to a Unified Pro Max switch. This gives me many power over Ethernet ports for hardwiring devices. And for Wi-Fi, I have two U7 Pro access points, which require power over Ethernet. I'll link everything down below in case you're interested. Again, you don't have to go this route. A simple plug and play mesh system from Eero, Netgear, Orbi, or any other decent brand should work just fine also, as long as you consider everything we've discussed in this video. And once the network foundation is solid, you're in great shape to start building an awesome smart home. Now that we've built the base, the next most important thing to understand, in my opinion, is how your smart home devices actually communicate with each other. You may see words like Thread, Wi-Fi, Matter, Hubs, Zigbee, etc. It's easy to ignore all that and just look for a logo on the box, but those details are actually important to understand and could play a huge role in how reliable your devices will be and how well your system scales over time. So as you watch this next section, don't try to, memorize everything. Just focus on understanding the roles, what acts as the brains, what acts as the messenger, and how everything stays connected. I think once that clicks, choosing the right devices for your smart home will get a whole lot easier. If you're just getting started, don't worry, I will break everything down into simple terms here. And if you're more experienced, I think you'll also pick up some useful strategies to make your system more reliable. Let's go ahead and start with the backbone of every Apple home ecosystem, and that is your home hubs. If you want to set up your smart home using Apple Home, you're going to need a home hub. At the time of this recording, that can be a HomePod Mini, or an Apple TV 4K. There have been some rumors that suggest we'll also see a new home hub device from Apple released sometime in the near future. So depending on when you're watching this, you may even have more options for a home hub. Now with Apple Home, all of the processing of your smart home commands, automations, camera events and processing, all that's done through your Apple Home Hub. This is also what's required for you to be able to control your smart home remotely when you're away from home. You can have multiple home hubs throughout the house. In the Apple Home app, you can go to settings and see which home hubs are active and which is primary. You can turn on automatic selection, or like me, you can choose specifically which hub you wish to be the preferred home hub. I chose my living room Apple TV 4K because it's the only one that I have in the house that is hardwired via Ethernet to my router. Generally speaking, a hardwired connection is just always going to be more stable and preferred over a wireless connection, which is why I chose this one as my primary hub. That said, if you don't have any home hubs that are hardwired, you should still be fine using your home hubs over Wi-Fi, as long as you have a solid Wi-Fi network established in your home. At the time of this recording, the Apple TV 4K with Wi-Fi and Ethernet is the only Apple Home Hub sold with an Ethernet port. I'll also note that this Apple TV 4K has a Thread radio built in, whereas the cheaper one does not. We'll discuss Thread more in a minute, but I did want to bring this up because I think if you do get an Apple TV 4K for your smart home, you'll definitely want to get that version that has the Thread radio built in. Both the HomePod and the HomePod Mini also have Thread radios built in, so either of these can be good as your home hub as well. Any additional hubs that you have will be used basically in like a standby mode, meaning if the connection is interrupted with your preferred home hub, one of the other ones will take over. Now you heard me mention Thread, which is a wireless protocol that smart devices may or may not use. So let's cover the different protocols that may exist in your smart home. This is a very important factor, I think, when choosing which smart home devices to purchase, and it's not always super clear. Your smart home devices like smart locks, bulbs, switches, and anything else in your smart home will use some sort of protocol to connect to your home ecosystem. And there are a few options. It could be Thread, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, Ethernet, or potentially something else utilizing a third-party hub. So let's cover each of these so you understand the difference. Bluetooth is still an option that's been sort of phasing out in many cases. Bluetooth connected devices will often be a little bit slower to respond than other protocols. I have seen some good implementations of Bluetooth though, like flick buttons or switchbot devices, both of which I do use in my smart home. Now both of those examples will connect those devices via Bluetooth to their proprietary hubs, which I do think makes a difference. We'll talk more about proprietary hubs in a minute. But typically Bluetooth is a little bit slower and stuff. So that's not to say that all Bluetooth devices are bad. Thread has slowly started to replace Bluetooth for a lot of devices, I think, like smart sensors and smart locks and things like that, typically low power devices. Thread is a new wireless protocol that was developed specifically for smart homes. It's typically much faster and more responsive than Bluetooth. Devices that use Thread to connect to your smart home do require a Thread border router. The good news is that your Apple Home Hub is also a Thread border router. Well, all of them except that Apple TV without the Thread radio built in, which is why I typically recommend not getting that one. Thread is a low-power, self-healing wireless mesh protocol. Your Thread accessories will connect directly to your Thread border router or your Apple Home Hub, which is connected to the internet. So there are no proprietary manufacturer hubs needed for Thread devices. Now there are two types of Thread devices, sleepy-in devices and Thread routers. Devices like wireless, battery-powered sensors, locks, etc. are typically in devices, and devices like smart bulbs, light switches, smart plugs, etc. These are devices that are always receiving power. These are Thread routers. That means these devices can actually extend your Thread mesh network, giving you more range for your Thread accessories. So as opposed to Wi-Fi, where generally the more devices you have on the network, the more likely you'll bog down and kind of slow down that network. With Thread, the more devices you have, the stronger your Thread network can actually become. Now, Wi-Fi is still another protocol that's very common in smart home accessories. Wi-Fi devices will connect directly to your home Wi-Fi network, but again, if you have a ton of Wi-Fi smart home devices, you could potentially clog up your network. This is another reason why it's important to first establish a solid home network with a good router before getting too deep into all this smart home stuff, as we discussed in the first video of this series. The better your network router, the more Wi-Fi devices it can handle. Some smart home devices can also be connected over Ethernet hardwired. These devices don't rely on Thread or Wi-Fi. Things like PoE cameras, manufacturers' bridges or hubs may need to be hardwired over Ethernet to your router or switch. I've even seen smart shades available that can be connected directly over Ethernet. And then you have those bridge devices briefly mentioned earlier. So these will actually connect to your network over Ethernet or Wi-Fi. A bridge is a device that allows you to connect smart home accessories that may use a different protocol to your Apple Home setup. They bridge accessories over to Apple Home. These accessories may use Zigbee, Z-Wave, or even some other proprietary protocol to connect to the bridge. That bridge then exposes those child accessories to Apple Home. Lutron Caseta is a good example. Lutron uses its own proprietary Clear Connect wireless protocol to connect light switches and shades to their Lutron Smart Bridge. In any case, you will need to connect the third-party bridge to your network, and then those child accessories will be exposed to your Apple Home app through that bridge. Now you may be thinking, well, I clearly don't want to get smart home accessories that require an additional third-party bridge like these we're mentioning. And I do get that, but there are some benefits to these devices that connect through a bridge just to maybe consider. Aqara sensors and accessories and Lutron Caseta smart switches have been some of the most reliable smart home devices in my smart home over the years. They stay connected and work really fast. Another nice thing about bridge devices is that you only need to connect your bridge to Apple Home, and then all of those connected child accessories will automatically be added to Apple Home. So if you get new devices, say a new switch down the road, just connect it to your bridge and then that new switch will automatically be shown in the Apple Home app. It also makes troubleshooting, moving, or switching Wi-Fi networks much easier if you ever have to do any of those things. So I'm actually a fan of using bridges in some cases. I'd recommend this only if you really like a certain brand and plan to get more than just a couple devices to connect to your bridge. For example, you probably wouldn't want to have to get a bridge and add it to your home just for like 1 or 2 smart light bulbs or switches, but if you plan to put Philips Hue or Lutron switches throughout your entire house, then having that bridge might make sense. And that's also going to be far less devices that you would have to add to your Wi-Fi network individually if you went with, an alternative Wi-Fi device. I'd much rather have 30 smart switches that connect to a bridge than 30 Wi-Fi smart switches that need to connect directly to my Wi-Fi network. Just something to consider. All right, now where does Matter fit into all of this? If you've done any research at all, you've likely heard the term Matter by now. Matter is the latest smart home standard aimed at improving interoperability and compatibility between different manufacturers and devices. It's secure and requires local control as an option, meaning your devices don't have to communicate with the cloud over the internet just to turn your lights on. It's the agreed upon standard by all the major smart home ecosystems, including Apple Home, Alexa, Google Home, SmartThings, and more. In theory, any smart home device that supports Matter will work with Apple Home or any other smart home ecosystem. At least that's the end goal. We're still in the early stages of Matter, so there are some nuances here and there, but that's the main concept. Matter is essentially the application layer. Everything we discussed earlier are connection protocols, whereas Matter is the application layer that sits on top of those protocols. So Matter certified products may connect to your smart home using any of the previously mentioned protocols. There are Matter over Wi-Fi devices, Matter over Thread devices, Matter over Ethernet devices, and Matter over Bridge devices. And this is why I think it's important to understand the underlying connection protocols that your smart home devices are using. A Matter smart light switch may connect over Wi-Fi, or it may connect over Thread, or even through a bridge using Zigbee or something like that, for example. So it can be a little confusing when you're buying new devices. Matter is not perfect yet either. As mentioned, it's still in its infancy as a standard, but it has come a long way in the past couple of years. I use a number of Matter accessories in my home, and I do think getting Matter accessories is a good way to future-proof your home. One nice feature of Matter is something called multi-admin support. This allows you to connect your Matter smart devices to multiple ecosystems, even at the same time if you want. So that means you could buy a Matter smart light today, and you can connect it to Apple Home or Google Home or Alexa or all of them if you want. Google, turn the Eve Energy 2 on.
All right, turning Eve Energy 2 on.
Hey, turn the Eve Energy 2 off.
Okay, the Eve Energy 2 is off.
This is nice if you decide you want to use or try a different smart home ecosystem down the road one day. So I am a fan of Matter, but it's not to say that you should only get devices that support Matter. There's still a number of devices that don't support Matter that I still use and recommend. Many of these devices still support all of the major ecosystems individually, but maybe don't support Matter. Lutron Caseta is a good example I still use, and I highly recommend Lutron. No Matter support yet still at the time of this recording, but Lutron still works with all of the major smart home ecosystems, and again, is something that I usually highly recommend. If you get a product without Matter support, you'll just need to make sure the smart home devices that you purchase support Apple Home or whatever ecosystem you might be using. So when buying new devices, just look for either that works with HomeKit or Apple Home logo or the Matter logo. If you see either one of those, you should be good to go. Also, if you have older devices that don't support Matter, but do maybe support HomeKit or Apple Home, there's no need to worry. These devices should continue working with your smart home for years to come. So now you understand the core of how your Apple Home smart home actually communicates. Your home hub serves as the brain of the operation, handling all of your automations and remote access. The various protocols, Thread, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, Zigbee maybe, and the bridges, those are kind of like the nervous system carrying the signals between your hubs and all your devices. And Matter, well, think of Matter as the universal translator that's just making it easier for different ecosystems to kind of understand each other, giving you more flexibility and future-proofing your smart home. Again, when shopping for smart home devices, I recommend first checking if it supports Matter or Apple Home. If it does, then look at which protocol it uses. Determine which protocol you prefer. For battery-powered devices like sensors and devices that maybe I have a whole lot of, like smart switches or bulbs, I generally prefer Thread or devices that use a third-party hub like Lutron Caseta or Akara. But I still have a number of Wi-Fi devices too on my network, like Govee lights and Nanoleaf and stuff that will connect directly to my Wi-Fi network. Cameras, because they require more bandwidth, will always connect over Wi-Fi unless you're able to get and install power over Ethernet cameras. Once you understand that technical foundation, the focus shifts away from hardware and protocols towards the fun part, how your smart home actually gets used day to day. And this comes down to organization, scenes, and automations, which is where most smart homes either start to shine or start to feel very frustrating. You can have the fastest network, the best hubs, and the newest devices, but if your smart home is confusing to use, your family, and maybe even you just will not use it and will get frustrated. Names matter, structure matters, and scenes and automations only work if they make sense to the people living in the house. As you watch this next part, don't think about what's possible, think about what's practical. This is very important, especially if you live with other people. So let's talk about how to organize your smart home in a way that actually works long term. Here we'll talk about adding new devices, how to organize your smart home that actually makes sense, even as your smart home grows for years to come, setting up scenes that make controlling your home efficient and enjoyable, and also creating your first automations to make your home truly smart. When it comes to organizing your smart home, the foundation starts with how you structure your rooms and zones in the Apple Home app. Apple gives you flexibility in how you define your rooms, but there are some best practices that I would consider. First, align your Apple Home rooms with the physical spaces that make sense to you and your family. This sounds kind of obvious, but I've seen this done all kinds of ways that could really make finding and controlling accessories difficult. Next, use zones to strategically group rooms together. Zones let you control multiple rooms with a single command. I have zones for upstairs, downstairs, and outside, all of which contain multiple rooms. This means I can say things like, hey, turn off all the lights downstairs instead of having to name each room or device. Or, hey, play music downstairs, and it'll play music on the speakers in all of the rooms downstairs in that zone. When adding devices to your rooms, Apple makes it pretty straightforward, and depending on when you're watching this, things may look a little different than what you see in this video, as Apple may change the look of the operating system or the Home app, but the process should remain the same. Simply tap the plus icon to add a new device, then scan the QR code of your smart home device or put in the numerical code. Now remember, if you set up a separate IoT network as we discussed in the first video, switch your iPhone to that network before adding new devices, since those smart home devices will use whatever network your phone is connected to when pairing. Next, let's talk about naming your devices. This is crucial, I think, for a good smart home experience, especially if you're using Siri. I recommend using a consistent pattern. Room plus device name is what I often do, making the device name something that's intuitive in natural conversation. I don't do this for all my devices, but it's very helpful when you have devices that you may want to use the same name for in different rooms. For example, you may have a ceiling fan in multiple rooms, so I'd name them living room ceiling fan, guest room ceiling fan, etc. And here's a helpful tip you may not know. In the Apple Home app, when you start a device name with the room name, the app won't show the room name for the device if that device is placed in the same room. I hope that makes sense. But if something does get moved, accidentally or for whatever reason to another room, it will show you that full name, including the room name. And that way you'll just know which device is which and where it belongs and stuff based on that name. HomePods are smart enough to control only devices in the same room when you give voice commands without specifying the room name. For example, if you're in the bedroom, you can say, hey, turn on the ceiling fan, and Apple Home will turn on only the ceiling fan in that room. Hey Siri, turn on the fan. Siri, turn off the lights. When you're using iPhone or Apple Watch or something like that, though, you will need to include the room name in your voice commands. So you would have to say something like, hey, turn on the bedroom ceiling fan. The Home app interface has several key organizational elements, and again, this could change with future software updates and stuff like that. But as it is right now at the time of this recording, the status section at the top groups accessories by category: climate, lights, security, etc. You can specify which devices show up here in this status section by going to the individual devices settings. Now below that, you can customize these sections however you prefer. I prefer keeping cameras at the top, followed by frequently used scenes, and then favorites and rooms. For each device, you can choose to include it in the home view, favorites, or both. If neither is selected, you'll need to navigate to the specific room to find that device. You can quickly access rooms by tapping the three dots in the top corner on an iPhone or using the sidebar on an iPad or Mac. You can also tap any room name from the Home tab to quickly jump to that room. Now it's worth noting that sensors are only displayed in the status sections along the top of the home or room views. Now beyond the Home app, I maintain a simple spreadsheet to track all my smart home devices. This includes device name and manufacturer, connection type and protocol, battery type, if applicable, which ecosystems it's connected to, and the HomeKit or Matter code. Now the HomeKit or Matter code is crucial if you ever need to reset the device in the future. You definitely don't want to lose those codes. So this all might seem like a little bit overkill, but when you have 100+ devices potentially connected to different ecosystems and stuff, all using different protocols, having this information kind of readily available is invaluable for troubleshooting. I'm not a spreadsheet guy. This is actually something that I only started doing recently, and I am still refining it, but I wish I would have done this from the beginning. It's just much easier to start this system early than to have to organize everything years later like I'm doing right now. But this also makes for a good way to plan upgrades or replacements. You could kind of create sort of a wish list here as well, add notes, whatever, to different devices when you change batteries, all that kind of stuff. So this can be really helpful, I think, for a number of reasons. Now that we have our smart home organized with proper room structure and naming conventions, let's talk about scenes and automations. So what is a scene? Simply put, a scene is a preset configuration of multiple devices that you can activate with a single tap or a voice command. You want to turn all the lights in the room blue and lower the blinds for movie night, or maybe you want to lock all the doors, close the garage, and arm the security system when it's time for bed. Scenes make this possible. To create a scene, tap the plus icon and select New Scene. Choose a suggested scene name or create a custom one. Give it a clear, descriptive name. This is especially important if you'll be using Siri to activate it. Select and configure each accessory for the scene. Now here's a pro tip. Before creating your scene, you can set all your devices to the desired state for the scene in the Home app. And then when you add each accessory to the scene, it will automatically bring in those current settings, just saving you from having to adjust and test the scene as you build it. You can test your scene to make sure everything works as expected, and then add it to your home view for easy access if you want. While scenes are manually activated, automations take your smart home to the next level by happening automatically based on triggers. This is, in my opinion, what makes a home truly smart. Apple Home offers several automation trigger types. You have time-based automations. These are triggered at specific times, or sunrise or sunset. Turn on, the outdoor lights at sunset, or run your good morning scene at 6 a.m. on weekdays, for example. Location-based automations are triggered when you arrive or leave home. So turn on lights when you arrive home, or turn off everything when everyone leaves the house. Accessory-based automations are triggered when a device state changes. So when the door unlocks, turn on the hallway lights, or run your movie time scene when the TV turns on. Sensor-based automations similarly are triggered by environmental changes or sensors. So, turn on the humidifier when the humidity drops below 40%, for example, or turn on lights when motion is detected. Creating automations are pretty simple in the Home app once you understand how they work. So just tap the plus icon and then choose Add Automation. Choose a trigger like people arrive, add any conditions like at night, select the accessories or scenes to activate. Adjust any additional options like auto off timers. So now we have an automation that runs anytime someone arrives home, only at night, and turns on the front foyer light. Now here are a few automation best practices if you're new to this. One, just start simple. Before creating anything too complex, use scenes with your automations for easier modifications later. So instead of an automation controlling individual accessories, you can have an automation just trigger certain scenes. And then just always be sure to consider like edge cases and how automations might affect, others in your house. Lights coming on when your spouse is asleep might not be a good thing. So just definitely think about that kind of stuff. Some of my favorite simple automations include outdoor lights that turn on or off, and shades, smart shades that open and close based on sunset and sunrise. An away mode automation that turns off certain devices when everyone leaves the house. And one of the first ones I set up was actually, I have a safety automation that turns off my wife's hair straightener just using a simple smart plug whenever she leaves home. Automations are really where it's at, and they can be simple or extremely advanced, which we'll cover a little bit more in future videos. Kudos if you stuck with me this far. We've now covered all the essential layers of a great smart home, your network infrastructure, your hubs and protocols, and the organization, scenes, and automations that just make everything work together seamlessly. Now before we wrap it up, I did promise to share my top 3 power user tips. These are little tricks that can take your smart home automations to the next level without getting too crazy or advanced. Tip number 1, use dummy switches. One of my favorite little tricks is using dummy switches. Now these are virtual switches that don't control any physical devices, but can be used to toggle states or conditions in your automations. For example, a guest mode switch, when activated, can prevent certain automations from running. That way you don't end up, sitting on the back porch in the dark with your guest, when your normal automations would otherwise run, turning off lights and stuff like that. So these are great for having guests over, being sick in bed all day, or working an unusual schedule. Again, remember, like I said earlier, think about those edge cases, and dummy switches is a great way to create automations that take into account those edge cases. You can create dummy switches using third-party apps or other ecosystems, which we will cover more in the next video. In a pinch, you can even use a physical smart plug as your dummy switch if you need to. Tip number 2, convert your automations to shortcuts when you're ready. In the Apple Home app, when creating an automation, if you scroll all the way down and choose Convert to Shortcut, you will have more options. So this lets you create more sophisticated logic than what's possible with just a standard Apple Home automation. You can add multiple conditions, check the current date, weather conditions, and much more with this. Now, once you've mastered the basics of automations in the Apple Home app, I definitely would explore this Convert to Shortcut feature to see what you can do with that. Tip number 3, use visual indicators to communicate system states. For example, I created automations that turn certain lights red when either of my outdoor gates are open, alerting everyone in the house not to let the dogs out. Lights also turn red when the security system is armed, providing a clear visual cue to everyone that's home not to open the door before disarming the alarm. You can even use colored lights to indicate when you're in a meeting or any other number of things. If you've made it this far, you've already done more than most people ever do with their smart homes, and you have a better understanding than most. Your setup should be well organized, easy to use, and ready to expand as far as you'd like to take it. And where most people often go wrong is trying to do too much too early. Don't overcomplicate things. Start with the routines you already have on a day-to-day basis, like waking up, leaving the house, coming home, going to bed. And once your smart home handles those moments well, then you can start expanding things and trying to do more. For a lot of people, I think Apple Home alone is more than enough to do that, especially once it's properly organized and set up. Now, if you've reached a point where you're thinking, I want more control, or I want better automations with more options, or I want to integrate all kinds of things into Apple Home that Apple Home doesn't natively support, that's when it makes sense to start looking beyond the basics. That's exactly what we'll cover next. And before we go any further, I want to really be clear about this next section. You do not need advanced tools to have a great Apple Home setup. Like I said, for most people, Apple Home by itself is more than powerful enough to give you convenient control over your smart home and automations. The tools I'm about to show you are for more specific situations. When you want to do more advanced automations than you can do natively with Apple Home, when you need to integrate devices that don't work with Apple Home by itself, or when you just enjoy tinkering and pushing the limits, you might be amazed at the things that are possible with your smart home. But if your smart home already feels reliable, easy to use, and you're happy with it, there's absolutely no need to add complexity. But if this whole smart home thing is becoming a bit of a hobby and more than, just a simple convenience, then this next section is probably for you. If you've heard terms like Homebridge, Home Assistant, and Scrypted, but you're not really sure where that fits in with your Apple Home ecosystem or your smart home, then this next section will help you understand what's possible and how I personally take my smart home to another level. And it allows me to do much more than I could do with just Apple Home alone. So I'm going to give you honest opinions about what's worth it and what I'm personally using. Watch this next section as inspiration, again, to see what is possible. This is not a requirement, but that way, if you get to a place in the future where you wish you could do more, you'll know what options you have and what to look further into. So let's take a look. The good news is that you don't have to completely abandon Apple Home to get these other capabilities. I love Apple Home and I still use it as the foundation of my smart home. Everything I'm going to show you today can work alongside your existing Apple Home setup and even enhance it. So here's what we'll cover. Third-party HomeKit apps, Homebridge for adding non-HomeKit devices to Apple Home, Scrypted for more advanced camera features and integrations, and other complementary ecosystems like Home Assistant and Homey or even Hubitat. Plus, I'll share my current setup that combines the best of these for those that are interested. The approach that I would recommend is modular. You don't need to implement everything all at once. It's taken me years of kind of building onto my smart home to get to this point. You can certainly pick and choose what works for you based on your specific needs and technical comfort level, and you can always add things over time. So let's start with the simplest enhancement, and that's third-party HomeKit apps. Long before I started using Home Assistant or anything else, I began with third-party HomeKit apps. Apple limits what you can do in the native Apple Home app, but the HomeKit framework is actually much more capable than what the Home app offers. These third-party apps access the full HomeKit API and unlock capabilities that aren't available in the standard default Apple Home app. So let's discuss a few. For better organization and management, check out these apps. HomePass stores your HomeKit codes or Matter codes and device information. This is essential for troubleshooting or reinstalling devices. Home Batteries provides clear battery status for all your devices and customizable notifications when those battery levels get low. Home Devices helps you explore HomeKit compatible accessories, create wish lists, and stay updated on Apple Home related news. For enhanced visuals, check out the Home Paper app. This is a simple app that allows you to create custom wallpapers for the Apple Home app using your photos. Portal is a neat app that creates atmospheric experiences by combining visuals, spatial audio, and lighting control. Home Cam lets you view multiple cameras live streams simultaneously across all your Apple devices, including Mac and Apple TV. Signals for HomeKit lets you create customizable light flashing patterns for visual notifications or alerts. On the Mac version, you can run your light signals or even run personal Mac shortcuts triggered by HomeKit accessories. For advanced automations, I usually recommend the Eve app first. This is a free option that enables multiple triggers and conditions for your automations. The controller for HomeKit app, this here is the power user option, I think, for advanced automations. You can see devices' custom attributes that aren't seen in the Home app. There's backup tools, maintenance features, there's a hub mode for automations, and a custom floor plan for dashboards. Just a whole lot. I've done a few videos on some of these features, which I'll also link down below if interested. PushCut provides custom notifications and an automation server that can run iOS shortcuts and scenes in the background. Now for custom dashboards, maybe you have a wall-mounted iPad or something like that, check out the HomeRise app. This is a great dashboard app that can integrate calendars, reminders, websites, and there's even AR controls. Plus there's a really cool Vision Pro version if you happen to have an Apple Vision Pro. Home Dash is a very simple dashboard app that's very easy to configure and looks great. And then again, we've got the already mentioned controller for HomeKit app that can be used for that floor plan feature if you prefer that style of dashboard. All these apps work with the existing HomeKit framework. No additional hardware is needed. If you want to enhance HomeKit without diving into more complex solutions, these are a great starting point. Many require either a one-time purchase or a subscription, but they're typically developed by independent developers who are worth supporting, in my opinion. Now, as more devices support HomeKit natively these days, especially with Matter, you may not need additional hardware integration like Homebridge, but if you have devices that just don't work with HomeKit, then Homebridge might be your solution. Homebridge's primary function is integrating non-HomeKit devices into Apple Home. With over 2,000 community plugins supporting thousands of accessories, it can connect almost anything to HomeKit. It also enables useful features like dummy switches, which we mentioned in a previous video. Homebridge requires an always-on computer on your network. Many people use the Raspberry Pi, but it can also run on Windows, Mac, or in a Docker container on a NAS like a Synology. The software is open source and free to use, though you'll need that hardware to run it on. Similarly, Scrypted can integrate cameras that don't natively support HomeKit. So this also needs to be installed on a computer or some type of hardware on your network. I personally run Scrypted in a Docker container on my Synology NAS. Scrypted is particularly useful for getting NVR PoE cameras into HomeKit, even supporting HomeKit secure video for those cameras, which is awesome. It's free to use, though they do have a paid service called Scrypted NVR that provides 24/7 recording and additional features through their cloud service. That subscription is not necessary if you simply want to integrate your cameras into HomeKit with Scrypted. Okay, next let's talk about Homey and Home Assistant. So these are complete home systems that can run entirely on their own, but can also complement your Apple Home setup. Now, the main reason to consider either of these, in my opinion, is for their advanced automation capabilities. These options are significantly more capable than HomeKit alone for automation purposes. If you're building your Apple Home smart home and have automation ideas that HomeKit just can't handle, then these systems are worth considering. Many people, for example, use Apple Home as sort of the front end or the user interface for their smart home, while using Home Assistant behind the scenes for more complex automations. Home Assistant is free and open source and can run on almost any computer or a Raspberry Pi. You can buy pre-configured Home Assistant hubs like Home Assistant Green to get started real quickly. You might need additional dongles for certain wireless protocols like Zigbee or Thread though. I'll be honest, Home Assistant is not for the faint of heart. It's definitely a rabbit hole that requires a pretty massive time investment. Be prepared to spend many hours setting up and configuring your smart home if you go this route. It is perfect for hobbyists who enjoy tinkering. If all that doesn't scare you away, Home Assistant is a great addition to any Apple Home setup that does unlock tremendous potential if you're willing to put forth the effort. Now, similarly, Homey offers advanced automation capabilities as well. The key difference is that Homey is much more user-friendly. The interface, adding new devices, and the automation engine are all very intuitive, unlike Home Assistant's, pretty steep learning curve. However, Homey isn't open source like Home Assistant and does cost more for that plug and play functionality. Hubitat is similar to Homey and is another option, but its user face is not near as good as Homey, in my opinion, either. So I do prefer Homey over Hubitat when given those two options. Now, all of these, including Homey Pro, Hubitat, and Home Assistant, can all be used to integrate devices that don't natively support HomeKit into your Apple Home setup like Homebridge does. I'm often asked to compare Homey Pro and Home Assistant. That probably deserves its own video. In short, Home Assistant excels at device compatibility and customization. It's also great for automations. It's just very tedious. Whereas Homey, I personally find just much more enjoyable for creating automations thanks to its well-designed automation engine, and they are very powerful automations too. Both are extremely capable when it comes to those advanced automations. All right, so you might be wondering, out of all this, what am I currently using, having experimented with all of these options? Well, I'm actually using a mix of everything, really. Apple Home remains at the forefront of my smart home. My family and I use the Apple Home app as our primary interface for controlling our smart home. We utilize HomeKit features like Home Key for locks, HomeKit Secure Video for cameras and device notifications on the Apple TV. For advanced automations and broader device compatibility, I'm using Homey Pro and Home Assistant alongside Apple Home. I used Homebridge for years to integrate non-HomeKit devices, but Home Assistant has pretty much replaced Homebridge personally for me in my setup. I run Homey Pro for creating advanced automations because I just really enjoy the interface and the automation capabilities there with Homey Pro, much more than Home Assistant. That's just a personal thing. The main limitation in my experience with Homey is the device support gaps, hence why I still use Home Assistant as well. Fortunately, there's a Home Assistant plugin for Homey Pro, allowing me to use Home Assistant for device integration, and then I can bring those devices into Homey if maybe Homey doesn't support them. Both systems can expose devices to Apple Home that aren't natively supported in HomeKit. And both platforms do offer dashboard capabilities, but Home Assistant provides more flexibility despite being more tedious to configure. So I do like to use a custom Home Assistant dashboard on my wall-mounted iPad. That just works well for everyone in the house. I also use Scrypted to integrate my PoE cameras into HomeKit and still use a number of those third-party HomeKit apps mentioned earlier in the video as well for various things. I look at all of these as tools to help enhance my Apple Home smart home. So to recap, I'm currently using Apple Home as the face of my smart home with Homey Pro, Home Assistant, and Scrypted behind the scenes. I do still use a number of those third-party HomeKit apps as well. My setup might seem like overkill, but I do enjoy having the best of both worlds with Homey Pro and Home Assistant, plus HomeKit integration from my cameras through Scrypted. Most importantly, my family and I can still use Apple Home and for control while benefiting from all the Apple exclusive features with HomeKit. If you've watched this entire masterclass, you now understand more than most people do about building a smart home. A great smart home isn't about buying the most devices or chasing the newest tech. It's about building a system layer by layer that works reliably and fits the way you actually live your life. You've seen how the foundation starts with the network, how hubs and protocols determine how everything communicates, how organizations, scenes, and automations make the system usable for everyone in the house, and how advanced tools can extend Apple Home when and only when you need them. The most important takeaway, I think, is this: you don't have to build everything at once. It's taken me years of learning and slowly expanding and tinkering with my setup. Start with the basics, add devices intentionally, pay attention to what actually improves your day-to-day life, and refine as you go. On this channel, I share real-world Apple Home setups, product reviews, advanced automations, and I do live Q&A streams every week, all focused on building a smart home that actually works in real life. So be sure to subscribe, come join a live stream and ask questions, or you can join my channel membership and get access to my private Discord server where myself and many others are all building out our own DIY smart homes together. If this masterclass helped you, subscribing is the best way to keep learning as this smart home industry is evolving faster than ever. It's a great time to get into smart home tech, and I'm very excited for what's next in the industry and all the cool stuff we'll be covering here on this channel. As things change in the industry and within the Apple Home ecosystem, I'll be sure to release new videos and update you along the way. Thanks so much for sticking with me, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.